Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a truly heartwarming and honestly just a fascinating story for you today called The Language of the Aviary. Now, I want you to picture this for a second. Imagine a sprawling backyard garden totally bathed in that soft, golden early morning sunlight. Right in the back sits this massive aviary, just packed with a vibrant, bustling flock of cockatiel parrots. And here's the thing. These weren't just pets. To a kind young man named Arsalan, these birds were literally his best friends. The energy in this place is just off the charts. You've got feathers rustling, wings flapping like crazy with excitement, and happy chirps filling the air.
So Arsalan had this very specific morning routine. Every single day, before he even grabbed breakfast, he'd walk out to the aviary to greet his flock. He'd always say, "Good morning, my little friends." And normally, he expected the usual response, a big chorus of happy bird chirps. But one morning, something completely mind-blowing happened. As he walked in, cutting right through the sound of flapping wings, he heard this tiny, super clear voice say, "Good morning, Arsalan." He stopped dead in his tracks, looked around completely shocked, and just blurted out, "Wait, who said that?"
Well, out from the flock steps a very special cockatiel named Sunny. Now, Sunny wasn't just your average bird. He was super clever, really friendly, and he absolutely loved hanging out right next to Arsalan. So Sunny puffs up his little chest and proudly goes, "It was me! I mean, talk about a magical moment." Arsalan could barely believe his ears. A talking cockatiel? No way! He looked at him in total shock and asked, "You can talk?" And Sunny's response is what really sets the stage for our whole story today.
Okay, let's dive right into part 1, the talking aviary and the daily habit that created magic.
So you might be wondering, how exactly does a bird learn to greet you by your actual name? Well, it definitely wasn't some random accident. It all came down to Arsalan's routine. He visited his cockatiels every single morning before breakfast, talking to them as if they were his absolute best friends. This was the result of profound daily dedication. He didn't just, toss some seeds in a bowl and walk away. He really engaged with them. He spoke to them clearly, kindly, and consistently. He treated them with a level of genuine friendship that required a serious daily investment of his time.
And what's really wild is Sunny's explanation for his brand new skill. When Arsalan asks how he can talk, Sunny just nods proudly and says, "Yes, because you teach us every day." Wow, right? Sunny was actually listening. Every single day, he was paying super close attention to the words Arsalan was saying. Consistency and care, those are the absolute secret ingredients here. If you want to build a real connection, whether that's with an animal or a person, showing up consistently is half the battle.
And the cool thing about positive reinforcement, it spreads like wildfire. Once Sunny broke the ice, the rest of the flock was like, "Hey, we want to do that too." Soon, all the other cockatiels began learning words. They literally turned it into a group activity, practicing together every morning. Their vocabulary blew up to include things like hello, thank you, and that incredibly sweet phrase, "We love you, Arsalan." And let me tell you, this didn't stay a backyard secret for long. The birds became famous. People were literally driving in from nearby towns just to see these amazing talking cockatiels.
Moving right along to part 2, welcoming a scared friend and building trust with a new flock member.
Now, the story takes a bit of a turn here, and it becomes this really beautiful lesson in empathy. One afternoon, Arsalan spots a new cockatiel just sitting totally alone in a corner, and this brilliantly illustrates the huge contrast between the safe environment Arsalan built and the scary outside world. On one side, you have Sunny, clever, friendly, talkative, super proud. On the other side, you have this newcomer, Charlie. He's sad, terrified, silent, and separated from his family. When Arsalan gently walked up to ask his name, Charlie wouldn't make a peep. It was actually Sunny who flew over to explain that Charlie was scared because he'd lost his family.
So how do you handle a situation like that? Arsalan didn't force Charlie to mingle with the others. He felt so bad for the little guy, told him he was safe now, and then he just put in the work. He used this incredibly patient trust-building method. First, he approached gently and spoke kindly. Then, he brought him fresh fruits as a peace offering. Third, he talked softly to him every single day. And finally, he just spent extra time making sure Charlie felt welcome. It's the perfect blueprint for breaking down emotional walls, just pure, actionable empathy.
Now, this didn't happen overnight. It took weeks. Charlie slowly started observing the other birds, gradually realizing he wasn't a safe place. And then, finally, the breakthrough happened. Charlie spoke. He looked right at his caretaker and just said, "Thank you, Arsalan." Can you even imagine that moment? The entire aviary just erupted into this massive chorus of happy chirping. Sunny was flying around laughing, cheering. He talked.
And why is this such a big deal? Because right after that, Charlie smiled, looked at the rest of the flock and said, "You are all my family now." Arsalan's patience didn't just teach this bird a fun trick. His consistent, daily empathy gave a lonely, terrified creature a brand new family. The cockatiels cheered and flapped their wings, welcoming him in completely.
All right, let's look at part 3, the terrible storm, the ultimate test of their bond.
Because, every strong bond eventually gets tested. One evening, these really dark clouds rolled in and the wind started howling. A terrible storm was coming. Animals are so sensitive to this stuff, and the parrots instantly panicked. You can really feel their vulnerability through Charlie's nervous questions. He asks, "What if the storm destroys our home? What if we get hurt?" The fear was just so palpable. These poor birds had just finally learned to feel safe, and now they're staring down this massive force of nature.
So let's walk through that terrifying night. In the evening, when the dark clouds show up, Arsalan jumps straight into action. He quickly secures the whole aviary and covers it up tight to protect them, promising, "Don't be afraid, I will protect you." Then night falls, and the storm just unleashes. Rain is pouring down in absolute buckets, and the thunder is literally shaking the ground. Inside the aviary, the parrots are terrified, just huddled up together, trying to stay warm.
But here is where the story gets incredibly powerful. Arsalan didn't just throw a tarp over the cage and run inside to his warm bed. No, he stayed outside, right nearby, throughout the entire night to protect his frightened flock. Think about that. Through the freezing rain and the ground-shaking thunder, he stood right there. He had made a promise to protect them, and he literally sacrificed his own safety and comfort to keep that promise.
And you better believe the birds noticed. Right in the middle of the storm, Sunny, who is always so clever and observant, looks at Arsalan standing out there soaking wet and says, "You could be sleeping inside your warm house." It's just this amazing moment of mutual understanding. The bird totally gets what the human is sacrificing for them.
So the crucial point here is Arsalan's response. He just smiles through the pouring rain and tells Sunny, "I can't leave my family alone." Wow. Hearing those words, knowing that their protector actually viewed them as family and was willing to stand in the storm with them, that made the parrots feel incredibly safe, even with the thunder crashing everywhere. That kind of selfless devotion, that's what cements unbreakable trust.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, The Power of Kindness, Morning Light, and a Magical Chorus.
After what felt like endless hours, the storm finally passed. The next morning was like night and day. Sunlight was shining brightly all across the garden. The birds were out, flying around, totally shaking off the fear from the night before. Charlie is shouting, "We made it!" And Sunny is cheering right back, "We are safe!" The relief was just huge as the whole flock fluttered down to gather around Arsalan to celebrate surviving it together.
And then, honestly, one of the most magical things happens. Bathed in that morning sunlight, feeling completely safe and just so loved. Every single bird in the aviary spoke together in perfect unison. "We love you, Arsalan."
Obviously, Arsalan's eyes immediately filled with tears of pure happiness. He looked at his flock and just said, "And I love all of you too." That terrifying night in the storm, followed by that immense morning of gratitude, it permanently solidified their bond. From that day on, they were ready for any adventure because they knew, absolutely for sure, that they had each other's backs.
So, looking back at the core lessons from Arsalan's story, it's pretty clear what goes into building really strong friendships. They laughed together, they learned new things together, like all those new words, they helped one another when it really counted, like when Arsalan patiently helped Charlie adjust, or when he stood out in the storm to protect them. Ultimately, they proved that kindness and love really are the foundation that matters most.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question to think about. If a terrified, lonely bird like Charlie can learn to speak, to trust again, and to find a whole new family just through consistent patience and care, how can we use that exact same intentional kindness to build stronger, deeper friendships in our own human lives? Think about the people in your own life who might need a little extra patience, a soft word, or just someone to stand out in the storm with them. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Explainer. Keep learning, keep being kind, and I'll catch you on the next one.